Hey, Internet family. I'm in St. Louis, traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I had the craziest dream last night. I don't really know what specific intention I have with this video by sharing it with you guys because I haven't had enough time to process it and interpret it myself. I think there are elements of, yes, astral travel in there. I think there are elements of projection and processing in there. And I also think there are elements of empathing the areas around me and maybe what other people in my physical space, like the city or who happens to be staying in this hotel, what they've gone through or are going through or may go through in the dream. So I'm not really sure what it means. After a while, when I have time to unpack it on my many-hour drive today, I'm sure I will. But this is what happened. So I'm staying at this hotel. Checking in was a bit of a strange event, and yesterday I had some conversations about the nature of reality with people who authentically believe different things than I believe. My reality is very archetypal and multidimensional, and especially when you're learning that, when you're figuring out what's real and what's not, and what's real where, things can get a little dicey. And I had a period in my life, which is why now I know I can trust myself, because I did do trial and error, and I didn't always know what was what. So anyway, I was having a conversation about that type of thing. And then last night I checked into this hotel, and it was very intense. Checking into it is a little underworldy, a little jagged around the edges in certain subtle ways, energetic, emotional frequency ways. Anyway, so I checked in, burned some sage, went to sleep. And then in my sleep, I had the most intense dream. I was part of a military program where we would fight, but we would fight remotely using these handheld devices. And I realized in the dream, because my group, platoon, I don't know what it's called, might not be platoon at all. I don't really know military terminology very well, because I make it a point to not get caught up in that, because it's not my path, and it's definitely a rabbit hole that you can go down. So those of you guys who believe in the conspiracy theories about military operations, my answer to that is, I don't know. I don't know well enough to say. Anyways, in my dream, I was part of one. And our group was getting smaller and smaller and smaller because people kept dying. And as I went to go to work to start to fight with these handheld devices, I realized that my devices were faulty. And I wasn't able to win the way that I should be able to, because I was firing straight and what I was doing should have worked, but there were glitches in the mechanical devices that I was using. And I went to other people, and now there were only a few of us left. And at least one or two others were these demigod guys who you could kind of give them anything and they would just always win. So they weren't really that concerned with their own. But what I realized, and it was that moment of, oh shit, that moment of, this is something that is serious. And I know that that's one of the drawbacks of the military structure in this nation, is that the individual is not necessarily considered because they're looking after a huge thing. Anyways, I realized that it wasn't necessarily an accident that we were being phased out, and we were being phased out by not repairing our stuff, so we would die. And that realization shifted everything for me. And I also realized a couple of other things. A girl who was in our group who had at one point been the same age as me kept getting younger and younger, and at this point I asked how old she was, and she said she was 5, and I'm 30 years older than that. And I looked at her, and we had been the same age at one point. I was like, whoa, she really is, there's something going on. And there was another child there who showed me a trick with his eyes. He had and it's funny because this boy resembled a boy who I know the mother of in the physical-ish world, internet, and I don't think it was necessarily him, but it was the boy in my dream, who's toddler age, resembled him enough to really remind me of him. So I checked in with his mom today, and she told me that he does have very intense eyes, which was an interesting little synchronicity. But in the dream, he and I are sitting talking, right? Talking the way you do with a toddler, just hanging out, and he was being held by someone. We're at eye level looking, and he looks at me, and then he blinks and rolls his eyes, and he had double pupils, so he could roll his eyes up or down, and then another pupil would come into place. It was a very subtle thing. You could only tell if you were looking very closely. And I remember the shock that went through my system when I saw that, because it was right. This dream was very realistic. It felt very real, and it was right in front of me. And I had this, but with the amount of shadow work and going into underworldly places and doing that kind of stuff, I have a pretty good grace when that stuff happens. I don't generally freak out because I've had experiences that have told me not to freak, showed me how not to freak out. Not that I've never freaked out. Anyways, and so I looked at him and I was smiling and I was like, and inside I'm like, oh shit, oh my gosh, this is real, this is happening. But in the physical, the dream physical, I said, whoa, is there more than 2 or is there just 2? And he was laughing and he says, it's just 2. And this is, someone who's talking a little bit. But the shock to my system was so intense that it was painful. It was definitely unpleasant. And then I woke up, and this does not usually happen with dreams, but I woke up in my hotel room looking around and feeling the presence of it could have just been energy. I don't know that it was necessarily a being. And like I said, I don't know what goes on in military programs. I don't know. And the dream ended, by the way, with everyone telling me it was time to go and pointing me toward the door. And that at the time it felt kind of freaky, but when I woke up I was like, oh, thanks guys, I appreciate that. I went to visit and they told me when to leave and told me where to go, and it wasn't unfriendly. No one was unfriendly. It was just so intense and out of my understanding that it was painful. So that's a reminder to you guys. You don't need to go cracking people open. People blossom open at their own time, and not everyone's understanding of the world is the same, and that's okay. And so I think what that dream taught me, other than showing me some interesting stuff, and I'm going to have to do some research both physically by looking at different sources and also internally by meditating and that kind of thing to see what the heck that was. So I'm telling you this before I've processed it. Y'all probably have opinions. I don't know. Some of them will probably ring true. Some of them probably won't if you guys share them with me. I can't say. But that showed me in a very visceral way, even though it was my dream self, I had a body, how unpleasant and painful it can be when you are forced to be shown a paradigm that defies your paradigm. And it's not a good thing. And so yet again, I'm just drawn back to a deeper level of, I do my thing and I don't need to push it on anybody. And that's the dream. So, just want to share that with you guys. I've been wanting for a long time to speak to people who've been in the military, to speak to soldiers, warriors, because there's something that I can feel. And I haven't spoken to enough of you. I've spoken to some, but I haven't spoken to enough. But I have a feeling that there is a good number of intuitives, empaths, psychic-y kind of folks in the military who have to go through some pretty epic, intense things. And I feel like I have the potential of having some suggestions, answers, recommendations, but they haven't quite ripened enough in my spirit for me to be ready to give them to you. So I also think that dream was showing me, because everything was very just disjointed and strange, and it was scary. And although nothing was happening to me in the moment, I woke up afraid, like you do when you're a kid and you wake up from a nightmare. I was scared when I woke up, and I had to wake up and turn the light on and burn a little Palo Santo and ground. And the thing to do at times like this is say, okay, is my physical body in danger right now? No one's trying to get in my room. Nothing's going on. I did bring out my knife and kept it close to me though, because I was scared, so why not, right? But okay, if my physical body is not in danger, then let's do energetic things. Let's strengthen our aura, let's call in guides, let's do a little clearing, maybe pull an oracle card or two, that kind of thing. So that's what I did, and it was okay. Then I had a marvelous time, then I went back to sleep and woke up, and now I'm on the road again. So the military stuff, those of you who are in the military or people whose partners are in the military, feel free to comment and maybe give me questions or suggestions so I can start to hone this a little bit more, because I know that's a whole thing, and I feel like that world does not necessarily have the vocabulary offered and understanding to know what's going on when you see spirits or feel deeper things or whatever. All I know is to always look for the harmonic. No matter what it is you're having to do, just say, okay, what is the way that is most heart-centered here that I can do this thing and still stay in my energetic, emotional integrity. So anyways, that's what I got for you. Very weird, I know, but that's real life, you guys. Sending you love from the road. Bye.